The penthouse was tomb silent. 40 floors above the city, the curtains sealed against the afternoon light. The air thick with something Lisa Harrington couldn't name. Resignation, perhaps, or surrender. Outside, Chicago stretched toward Lake Michigan, skyscrapers gleaming in the autumn sun. But inside, darkness had become her sanctuary. Lisa lay motionless on Egyptian cotton sheets, her once commanding frame now diminished. The designer silk blouse that had cost more than most people's monthly rent hung from her shoulders. Her breathing shallow, each inhale seemingly extracted at a cost. The bottle of pills sat on the nightstand, alongside a glass of water and a half-empty bottle of scotch. 30-year Macallan she'd been saving for a special occasion. This wasn't the occasion she'd imagined. Her laptop had gone untouched for weeks. Emails from the board of directors, from her executive team at Harrington Industries, from her attorney, all unanswered. What was the point? The oncologist's words echoed in her mind. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, 6 months, maybe 8 with aggressive treatment. The tumor had already metastasized. There were experimental options, of course, but the success rates were negligible. Lisa's fingers traced the medical alert bracelet hidden beneath her sleeve. After the diagnosis, she disappeared. No dramatic announcement, no tearful gathering of employees. She'd simply instructed her assistant to clear her roster indefinitely, cited a family emergency, though there was no family to speak of, and retreated to her penthouse. No one had come looking. Not really. A few perfunctory calls, flowers from the board with a generic card wishing her well. 30 years building a company worth billions, and this was what remained. Silence, solitude, and a forum on the dark web where people who wanted to die could connect with people willing to help them do it. The transaction had been simpler than she'd expected. Bitcoin transferred to an anonymous account. A brief exchange of messages, a time arranged, no names, no details about her condition, just the address and the promise. It would be quick, painless, professional. Today was the day. 3 o'clock. She glanced at the Patek Philippe watch on her wrist, a gift to herself when Harrington Industries had gone public 5 years ago. 2:58. Her heartbeat quickened, not with fear, but with something adjacent to relief. The waiting would soon be over. The doorbell echoed through the penthouse, startling her despite its expected arrival. Lisa closed her eyes, gathering whatever strength remained. This was her choice. Her final act of autonomy in a body that had betrayed her. The boardroom, the corner office, the negotiating table. She'd controlled it all. Now she would control this too. The second chime came, more insistent. Lisa didn't move to answer it. They'd been instructed to let themselves in. The door was unlocked, a detail that would have been unthinkable weeks ago when security had been a paramount concern. Now it seemed trivial. She listened to the door open, close. Heavy footsteps crossing marble tile. Work boots, she thought absently. Not what she'd expected. Her eyes remained closed, conserving energy for whatever came next. The footsteps paused at the threshold of her bedroom. Please just make it fast. Her voice emerged as barely a thread, unfamiliar even to her own ears. The sound of something heavy hitting the floor made her flinch. A toolbox, metal clanging against imported tile. Not what she'd expected at all. Lisa forced her eyes open, the effort greater than it should have been. A man stood in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, work uniform with a name patch, Jason. He stared at her with a mixture of confusion and something else, recognition perhaps. Not of her specifically, but of the situation. She took in the details slowly. The toolbox at his feet, the screwdrivers scattered across the floor, the building maintenance logo on his shirt. This wasn't the person she'd paid. This was someone else entirely. I'm here about the air conditioning. His voice was quiet, controlled, incongruous in the cathedral silence of wealth and surrender. The words took a moment to penetrate the fog of her mind. Lisa felt heat rise to her hollow cheeks. Not embarrassment exactly, but the ghost of it. The muscle memory of a woman who had once commanded boardrooms, who had built an empire from her father's failing construction business through sheer force of will and ruthless competence. A woman who didn't make mistakes. Get out. Her voice found its edge, sharper than it had been moments before. I didn't call about the air conditioning. Get out now, but it was too late. She'd seen the recognition in his eyes, the understanding of what he'd walked into, of what she'd mistaken him for. And worse, he'd seen the evidence laid bare. The pill bottles lined up on the nightstand, the medical alert bracelet half hidden under silk, the oxygen monitor clipped to her finger. And most damning of all, her phone still glowing on the bed beside her, the dark web forum visible on the screen. Jason didn't move. His face remained impassive, but something shifted in his posture. He bent down, methodically picking up his scattered tools one by one, movements careful and deliberate. The building manager called, said your unit's been running hot for 2 days. The compressor's probably shot. I'll check the unit on the roof. Won't bother you again. Their eyes met, held. Lisa had spent a lifetime reading people across negotiating tables, assessing threats, measuring weaknesses. This man, this maintenance worker, with calloused hands and faint paint stains on his jeans, was offering her something. Not sympathy, which she would have despised. Not judgment, which she would have dismissed. But a way out, a moment of dignity, a chance to pretend this hadn't happened. She should have accepted it, should have nodded, turned away, let him go. Instead, she found herself speaking, the words emerging with the sharp, testing quality that had once made junior executives tremble. How much does a maintenance man make? Hourly. Jason paused at the threshold, one hand on the doorframe. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did. A flicker of surprise, perhaps, that she'd engaged rather than dismissed. Enough. Enough for what? The question was a challenge, remnants of the CEO she'd been just months ago. To feed my kid, fix her teeth when they come in crooked, maybe save for college if she wants it. His gaze held steady, unapologetic, enough to sleep at night knowing I did something that matters. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Lisa lay in the expensive darkness, listening to his footsteps fade toward the roof access. Her phone buzzed. A message from the forum, someone confirming they'd received her payment, promising discretion, asking for the exact address, the appointment she'd been waiting for. Delayed but still available. She'd been so certain this morning, so ready. 45 years old, no husband, no children, no one who'd miss her beyond the quarterly earnings reports and a brief mention in the business section of the Tribune. The cancer was stage 4, inoperable. 6 months, maybe 8 if she wanted to spend them vomiting from chemotherapy while the board circled like vultures, waiting for the weakness they could exploit. Better to go out on her terms, clean, fast, before anyone saw her reduced to this fragile shadow. But now she couldn't stop thinking about the maintenance man's hands, the way they'd moved when he picked up his tools, careful and methodical. The hands of someone who fixed things because fixing things mattered. Her own hands had built Harrington Industries into a $3 billion corporation, 3,200 employees, contracts spanning 6 continents, and not one of them knew she was dying. Not one of them would have picked up her screwdrivers if she'd dropped them. Lisa deleted the forum message, not because she'd changed her mind. So she said, I changed my mind, she told herself, just because she needed the air conditioning fixed first. Even dying required some basic comfort. Jason stood on the roof, hands braced against the air conditioning unit that was running perfectly fine. The city sprawled below, tiny cars and tinier people living their tiny lives, unaware that 40 floors above them, a woman was trying to choose death. He'd known the moment he saw her, the way terminal patients looked at you like you were already part of the past, something they were practicing letting go of. The building manager hadn't called about the Harrington unit. Jason had been doing a job 3 floors down when he'd overheard the super mention the penthouse, mention Lisa Harrington, mention how strange it was that she hadn't complained about anything in weeks when she usually called twice a day about some detail or another. He'd volunteered to check on it, told himself it was professional courtesy. But standing here now, wrench in hand, he knew he'd lied. He'd come up here because Emma had asked him that morning why some people got to live in the clouds while other people fixed the clouds, and he hadn't had a good answer. He'd come up because the last thing Rachel had said to him, barely a whisper through the pain medication, was, "Don't let Emma think the world is just people who take and people who give. Teach her there's a third kind, the ones who stay." He hadn't understood it then, wasn't sure he understood it now. but he understood that whatever was happening in that penthouse, someone needed to stay. The AC unit kicked on with a mechanical hum. Jason pulled out his phone, looked at the photo that served as his wallpaper. Emma, 7 years old, missing both front teeth, grinning at the camera while holding up a drawing of their apartment. She'd colored it bigger than it was, added a backyard they didn't have, drawn a stick figure labeled Daddy's Friend, standing next to them. She'd been asking lately why they never had anyone over for dinner, why it was always just the two of them. He told her they had each other, and that was enough. But the truth was more complicated. After Rachel died, he'd withdrawn, focused entirely on Emma, on keeping their lives stable, on being both parents at once. The thought of letting anyone close, of building something that looked like family again, it terrified him, as if death might notice and come back to take that too. His phone buzzed with a text from the super. Any luck with the Harrington unit? Jason's thumbs hovered over the keyboard. A dozen responses formed and dissolved in his mind. The truth? There's nothing wrong with the unit. Ms. Harrington is dying and planning to end it. A lie. Everything's fine, just routine maintenance. A compromise. I'll need to come back to check on it. He settled on compressors failing, need to order parts, might take a few visits. He hit send before he could question why he was lying, why he was creating a reason to come back to a woman who clearly wanted to be left alone. Then he picked up his toolbox and headed back down the roof access, already knowing he'd regret this, already knowing he'd do it anyway. 3 days passed. Jason found himself at Lisa Harrington's door again, toolbox at his feet, holding a paper bag Emma had insisted he bring. The conversation that morning had been brief but unyielding. Daddy, if someone's sick, you bring soup. That's what Mrs. Patel did when I had the flu. He tried to explain that this was different, that the woman in the penthouse wasn't someone they knew, wasn't someone who wanted help. But Emma had already been ladling chicken broth into a container, her small hands steady and certain, and Jason hadn't had the heart to stop her. The door remained closed after his third knock. Jason checked his watch. 9:30 a.m., exactly when he'd said he'd return. He was about to leave the soup with a note when the door finally opened a crack. Lisa looked worse than before, thinner, the designer clothes replaced by a cotton t-shirt that hung off her frame. Her eyes, still sharp despite the shadows beneath them, moved from his face to the bag in his hand, then back. I told you I didn't need air conditioning. Jason kept his expression neutral, his voice matter-of-fact, still waiting on the part, but I brought some cooling packs to help with the heat until I can do a proper fix. He held up the bag, the lie feeling strangely less uncomfortable than he'd expected. Also, my daughter made soup. She's 7, doesn't really understand the concept of boundaries yet. Something shifted in Lisa's expression. Not softening exactly, more like a door opening a crack, just enough to see what might be on the other side. You told your daughter about me? Told her I met someone who was sick. She said sick people need soup. Lisa should have closed the door, should have called building security, filed a complaint, made it clear that she didn't need pity from a maintenance man and his child. But instead, she found herself asking, what kind of soup? Chicken with the little star-shaped noodles. She says they're good luck. Jason's mouth quirked slightly. I told her that's not really how luck works. She told me I don't know everything. Smart kid. The words emerged before Lisa could stop them, surprising her with their sincerity. Too smart sometimes. He held out the bag. You don't have to eat it. Can throw it away the second I leave. But she asked me to make sure you got it, so now you have. Lisa took the bag. It was warm in her hands, heavier than she'd expected. When was the last time someone had made her food? Not prepared by a chef, not ordered from a restaurant, but made with hands and care and the specific intention that she should eat it? She couldn't remember, thank you. The words felt unfamiliar on her tongue, rusty from disuse but genuine. Jason nodded, started to turn away, then stopped. The compressor part's going to take about 2 weeks. I'll need to check the unit every few days, make sure it doesn't fail completely. His eyes met hers, direct and unflinching. If that's all right with you, Lisa knew what he was really asking. Whether she'd still be here in 2 weeks. Whether she planned to see this through to whatever end she'd been planning when he first walked in. She should have told him to mind his own business. Should have made it clear that her life, her death, her choices were none of his concern. Instead, she found herself saying, Tuesday and Friday mornings before 10. I have calls after that. It was a lie. She didn't have calls, hadn't logged into her work email in 3 weeks. But saying it made her feel almost normal, like she was still the kind of person who had a schedule, who had obligations beyond deciding which day would be her last. Jason's face didn't change, but something in his eyes suggested he knew she was lying, knew and didn't care. Tuesday and Friday before 10. Got it. The pattern established itself without either of them acknowledging it. Jason would arrive at 9:30, toolbox in hand, and spend 20 minutes on the roof doing things to an air conditioning unit that worked perfectly fine. Then he'd knock on Lisa's door, deliver whatever Emma had made or insisted he bring, soup, cookies burned at the edges, a drawing of a sunflower because sick people should see something growing, and leave. They rarely talked beyond brief exchanges. Lisa never invited him further than the foyer. Jason never pushed. But on the fourth visit, Lisa found herself asking, "What happened to your wife?" She had a wedding ring indentation on Jason's left hand, barely visible but present to her trained eye. Years of business negotiations had taught her to notice details others missed. The question had been building since his first visit, along with others. Why was he doing this? What did he want from her? Why did his daughter's soup matter so much? Jason set down the container of soup, chicken again, Emma's only recipe, and his expression closed slightly, a reflex rather than a conscious choice. Car accident, 3 years ago. She was coming home from a night shift at the hospital, fell asleep at the wheel. The words were matter of fact, the tone of someone who'd said them enough times that they'd lost their ability to wound. Almost. I'm sorry, Lisa meant it. The empathy, like a forgotten muscle, suddenly flexed. Me too. Jason picked up his toolbox, his movements practiced and efficient. She was a good person. Better than me. Used to volunteer at free clinics, bring home patient stories, cry over people she'd never see again. He paused at the door, his back to Lisa. I used to think it was too much, that she cared too hard. Turns out caring too hard is the only thing that actually matters. The door closed behind him. Lisa stood in her empty penthouse holding Emma's soup like it was something fragile and precious. She hadn't told anyone about the cancer, hadn't called her few remaining friends, hadn't informed her attorney to update her will, hadn't reached out to the handful of cousins she only saw at weddings and funerals. What was the point? They'd react with the appropriate sadness, say the appropriate words, and then get back to their lives while she got back to dying. But this man, this stranger who fixed things for a living, kept showing up, kept bringing soup his daughter made, kept acting like her being alive on Tuesday meant something worth returning for on Friday. Lisa carried the soup to the kitchen, her steps slow but steadier than they'd been in weeks. The hunger surprised her, not just physical, but something deeper, a hunger to taste something other than fear and resignation. She heated the soup in a microwave that had never been used before she got sick, then sat at the kitchen island and ate it slowly. The star-shaped pasta was gummy, the broth oversalted. It was the best thing she'd tasted in months. Something changed after that day. Lisa found herself waiting for Jason's visits, found herself changing out of pajamas and into real clothes before he arrived. She'd brush her teeth, tie back her thinning hair, make some effort toward the appearance of normalcy. Not for him, she told herself, for her own dignity, for the memory of who she'd been before the diagnosis. On Friday, Lisa did something she hadn't done in weeks. She opened her laptop. The battery was dead, of course. She plugged it in, waited for it to power up, braced herself for what she'd find. The emails were catastrophic. Over 400 unread messages, increasing in urgency. The latest from Richard Parker, her CFO, arrived just yesterday. Subject line, emergency board meeting regarding your absence. She'd known this was coming. The board had been circling for years, waiting for any sign of weakness. Parker especially. He'd been angling for CEO since she'd promoted him 5 years ago, never quite forgiving her for being better at the job than he'd ever be. Now he had his excuse. Lisa clicked open the email. Veronica, I hope this message finds you well, though your continued absence suggests otherwise. The board has requested a meeting to discuss the leadership transition plan given your extended leave without adequate explanation. I'm sure you understand that in your absence, someone needs to steer the ship. I've taken the liberty of assuming interim authority over key decisions. We should discuss making this arrangement permanent. For the good of the company, of course. The board meeting is scheduled for November 15th. Your presence would be appreciated, but is not required for us to proceed. Regards, Richard Parker, Chief Financial Officer, Harrington Industries. Lisa read it 3 times. Felt the old anger rising, the instinct to fight, to show up at the office and remind Parker and the rest of them exactly who built this company from nothing. But the anger was weaker now, diluted by exhaustion and the bitter knowledge that Parker was right about one thing. Someone did need to steer the ship, and she was too busy drowning to hold the wheel. She closed the laptop, her mind spinning with possibilities. None of them good. Parker was smart, calculating. He wouldn't make a move this bold unless he had already secured enough board votes to succeed. And if he was assuming interim authority, that meant he was already making decisions that could damage the company she'd spent her life building. Lisa glanced at the calendar on her phone. November 15th, 12 days away. The oncologist had given her 6 months 2 months ago, but that was assuming aggressive treatment, which she'd refused. Realistically, she had, what, 3 months left? 4? Enough time to watch Parker dismantle her legacy piece by piece. The doorbell rang, Jason right on schedule. Lisa hesitated, then made her way to the door, her steps more purposeful than they'd been in weeks. Jason noticed the change immediately. Lisa was dressed, not in silk blouses or corporate armor, but in real clothes. Jeans, a cashmere sweater, flats instead of bare feet. Color had returned to her face, though whether from makeup or renewed vitality, he couldn't tell. She opened the door wider this time, gestured him inside with something almost like welcome. Coffee? The offer surprised both of them. Jason set down his toolbox, uncertain territory stretching before him. Sure, thanks. She led him to the kitchen, all marble and chrome, the kind of space designed to be photographed rather than used. But she moved through it with surprising competence, pulling out a French press, measuring grounds with the precision of someone who'd learned to do things properly or not at all. Your daughter, Lisa began, her back turned as she waited for the water to boil. Does she ask about her mother? Every day at first, then every week. Now it's random. She'll be fine for months, then see something. A woman wearing her mom's perfume, a show we used to watch together, and it hits her all over again. Jason leaned against the counter, the posture casual, but his body language alert. I used to try to have answers ready. Explanations about heaven or energy or how love doesn't die just because people do. But she doesn't want explanations. She just wants someone to sit with her while it hurts. Lisa pressed the French press down slowly, the familiar ritual grounding her. I'm dying, not a confession, a statement of fact. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. 6 months ago, they said I had 8 months, so I guess I'm running ahead of schedule. She poured 2 cups, handed one to Jason. Her hand was steady despite everything. I'm telling you because you keep bringing soup. Seems dishonest to let you waste food on someone who won't be around to eat it much longer. Jason took the coffee, sipped it. It was good, strong enough to taste like something. Rosie makes the soup for her, not for you. Lisa frowned. I don't understand. Every night she asks me who needs help tomorrow. I tell her about the trees I've got lined up, the people I'll meet. She picks one, makes something for them, says it's practice. Jason met her eyes, his gaze direct, unembellished. Practice for when she's big enough to help people herself. You're not wasting anything. You're teaching my kid that making soup for strangers matters. Something in Lisa's chest cracked. Not broke, cracked. The way ice cracks in spring, making space for something underneath to push through. She sat down at the kitchen island, her hands wrapped around the coffee cup like it was keeping her anchored. I built a company worth $3 billion, 3,200 employees across 6 continents. My picture's in business textbooks. Forbes calls me a titan. She looked up at Jason, her gaze steady despite the tremor in her voice. And I was going to die alone in that bedroom with nothing but a phone number from a dark web forum and enough pills to make it fast. But you didn't. The observation was simple, unvarnished. No. She smiled, thin and bitter. I didn't because some maintenance man's daughter thinks star-shaped noodles are good luck. and her father's too stubborn to mind his own business. Jason smiled back, the expression transforming his face. Guilty. They sat in silence, drinking coffee in a kitchen designed for show rather than use. While 40 floors below, the city went about its morning, unaware that something small and significant was happening in the clouds. Finally, Lisa said, "The board's moving against me. My CFO is trying to push me out, take over the company. If they succeed, everything I built." She stopped, started again. "I was going to let them. Figured it didn't matter. What's a legacy worth when you're dead? More than you think." Jason's response was immediate, unhesitating. "My wife used to say the only thing that survives us is what we taught other people to care about. Buildings fall down, companies get sold, money gets spent. But if you taught someone to give a damn, that outlasts everything." He finished his coffee, set the cup down with a careful precision that spoke of a man who respected other people's things. "Your board's making a move because they think you're too weak to fight back. Seems like a bad assumption." Lisa laughed. It came out rusty, like machinery that hadn't been used in years. "I'm dying, Jason. I can barely walk to the bathroom without getting winded." "What exactly am I supposed to fight them with?" "Time." The word hung between them, simple and devastating. "You've got time, maybe not years, but enough. Enough to decide who you want to be on the way out. The person who gave up or the person who made them work for it." He stood, picked up his toolbox. "Your call. But for what it's worth, Emma's been drawing you into her pictures lately. Last night she showed me one of you in a cape, said you look like someone who fights bad guys." He headed for the door, then paused. "Kids are pretty good at seeing who people actually are. Better than adults, usually." After he left, Lisa sat in her expensive kitchen and thought about a 7-year-old girl who drew capes on dying women. Thought about soup and star-shaped noodles and the specific kind of stubbornness it took to keep showing up when someone clearly wanted to be left alone. Then she opened her laptop and started typing an email to her attorney. If Parker wanted a fight, he was about to get one. She might be dying, but she wasn't dead yet. The next visit, Jason found the door offshore already open. Lisa was on the phone, pacing the penthouse in yoga pants and a Harrington Industries t-shirt he suspected she'd had since the company's early days. Her voice was sharp, cutting through someone's excuse with surgical precision. "I don't care what Richard told you, I'm still CEO. Any decision over $50,000 requires my signature. If he's bypassing that, he's violating corporate bylaws. Get me the documentation." She hung up, noticed Jason standing in the doorway. "Sorry, should have warned you. I'm making life difficult for people today." Jason set down the toolbox in the container. Emma had sent banana bread this time, with chocolate chips. Sounds like they deserve it. They really do. Lisa took the container, opened it, broke off a piece of banana bread. It was dry and the chocolate chips were unevenly distributed. Clearly the work of a 7-year-old baker. She ate it anyway. "I have a question, and you can say no." Jason waited. "I need help." Lisa's voice was steady, her gaze direct. "Not with air conditioning, with my CFO." She moved to the dining table where papers were spread out. Financial reports, contracts, board minutes. He's been embezzling. Small amounts at first, easy to hide in the quarterly reports. But I started digging yesterday, and the numbers don't match. He's been selling company assets, moving money offshore, building a case that I'm mentally incompetent so he can take over completely. She met Jason's eyes, a spark of the formidable CEO still visible beneath the illness. "I need proof, real proof, the kind that holds up in court. And I need someone he doesn't know exists to help me get it." Jason should have said no, should have explained that he fixed air conditioners, not corporate conspiracies, that he had a kid to think about and bills to pay and no business getting involved in whatever war was happening in boardrooms and offshore accounts. Instead, he asked, "What kind of help?" "Parker has a private investigator on retainer, follows me when I leave the building. Probably has been for weeks. I need someone to follow him, see who he's meeting with, what he's planning. I'll pay whatever." "No." Jason's voice was flat, final. Lisa frowned. "Then what?" "I did some investigative work after Rachel died. Insurance company tried to deny her life policy, claimed she was driving negligently. I had to prove otherwise." Jason crossed his arms, his posture shifting slightly. I know how to follow someone discreetly, how to document what I see. Lisa's expression revealed her surprise. Why would a maintenance man need those skills? Jason's mouth quirked slightly. I wasn't always a maintenance man. Did some PI work part-time when Emma was a baby? Rachel's hospital bills were... He shook his head, dismissing the memory. Point is, I can help, but not for money. What then? The question was pure CEO, direct, cutting to the business at hand. Emma needs dental work, braces, maybe surgery depending on how her jaw develops. Insurance covers some of it, but not enough. I've been saving, but it's slow. He met Lisa's gaze squarely. You help me get her teeth fixed. I'll help you get your proof. It was transactional, clean, the kind of deal Lisa understood. She nodded. Done. I'll call my dentist today. Best orthodontist in the city. Whatever she needs. Not your dentist. Jason's expression was unreadable. The clinic on 5th and Morrison, where people like us go. Lisa stared at him. In 20 years of negotiating billion-dollar deals, no one had ever turned down her money and offered her a partnership instead. It should have offended her, should have felt like pride masquerading as principle. But looking at Jason's face, she understood. This wasn't about pride. This was about teaching a 7-year-old girl that the world could be fair, even when it rarely was. Equals, she extended her hand. I'll send you everything I have on Parker. Bank records, travel logs, emails. You figure out the pattern, find the proof. I'll handle the legal side once we have it. They shook on it. Jason's hand was rough with calluses, warm and solid. Lisa's was cold, the skin paper thin, bones too prominent. But the grip was firm on both sides. The deal was made. What neither of them said out loud was that this was also an agreement to stay alive. That you didn't start a war if you planned to die before seeing it through. Jason left to pick up Emma from school. Lisa spent the rest of the afternoon on the phone with her attorney, her accountant, and a private security firm that specialized in corporate investigations. If Parker wanted to play dirty, she'd remind him who taught him everything he knew. The penthouse came alive again. Lisa converted the dining room into a war room. Laptop open, financial records spread across the table. Sticky notes tracking Parker's movements on a wall calendar. Her body remained weak, but her mind was sharp as ever, fueled by purpose and righteous anger. The chemo treatments she'd abandoned after the first session now seemed less futile. She made new appointments, endured the nausea and fatigue, marked each day off the calendar not as time lost, but as time claimed. Jason arrived each evening after Emma was in bed, reporting what he'd observed. Parker meeting with board members after hours. Parker having lunch with competitors. Parker visiting offshore banks. Lisa absorbed it all, connecting dots, building a case methodically, the way she'd built her company, brick by brick, leaving nothing to chance. Some nights, when the pain was too much or the chemo left her too weak to sit up, Jason would find her curled on the sofa instead of at the dining table. On those nights, he'd make tea, adjust her blankets, and sit nearby while they reviewed what they knew, his voice keeping her tethered to the task when her body tried to surrender. It was on one such night, 3 weeks into their unlikely partnership, that Lisa asked the question that had been building. Why are you really helping me? Jason was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the Chicago skyline visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. When Rachel was dying, he finally said, "She made me promise something." She said, "Don't let Emma think the world is just people who take and people who give. Teach her there's a third kind, the ones who stay." He looked back at Lisa, his expression open in a way it rarely was. I didn't understand what she meant then, but I think I do now. There are people who take, like your CFO, people who give, like the nurses who cared for Rachel, and people who stay, who witness the hard parts, who don't look away when it gets ugly. I want Emma to be that third kind, so I have to be that kind too. The simplicity of it stole Lisa's breath. In the corporate world, motivations were always complex, layered with self-interest and calculation. But this was elemental. A promise to a dead wife, a lesson for a daughter, a choice to stay. The only thing that survives us is what we taught other people to care about. Lisa echoed Jason's earlier words, understanding them more fully now. If I can't survive this, I at least want to make sure Parker doesn't either. I want to teach the people in my company that there are consequences for betrayal, that integrity matters. That's a legacy worth fighting for. Jason's voice was quiet but certain. Lisa nodded, something resolving within her. Tomorrow I need you to follow Parker to his lunch meeting. My sources say he's meeting with Harold Chen from Meridian Corp, our biggest competitor. If he's selling company secrets, I'll get proof. Jason's affirmation was simple, unembellished, like everything about him. As he was leaving, Lisa stopped him. Does Emma know what you're doing, these late nights? Jason shook his head. She thinks I'm fixing things in the building. Which isn't exactly wrong. Tell her, Lisa's voice caught, steadied. Tell her the queen in the tower says thank you for the soup, and that the bad guys don't stand a chance. For the first time since they'd met, Jason's composure cracked entirely. The smile that spread across his face transformed him, revealed the man he might have been in a different life, one with less loss. I'll tell her. She'll be thrilled. She's been asking when she can meet you. The question hung unspoken between them. Would there be time for that? Would Lisa live long enough to meet the child who'd been feeding her soup and drawing her with superhero capes? Neither knew the answer. Both chose to believe there would be. After Jason left, Lisa stood at the window for a long time, looking out at the city she'd conquered through sheer force of will and strategic brilliance. Tomorrow she'd endure another round of chemo. Tomorrow Jason would gather more evidence against Parker. Tomorrow the battle would continue. But tonight, for the first time since her diagnosis, Lisa felt something unexpected taking root alongside the cancer that was killing her. Purpose, not just to die with dignity, but to live with meaning for whatever time remained. To be the third kind of person, the one who stayed long enough to finish what she'd started. She turned from the window and returned to the dining table, to the financial records and email trails, to the work of building a case that would outlast her physical body. She wasn't naive. The cancer would win its war. But before it did, she would win hers. One cup of soup, one day, one piece of evidence at a time. The rental car smelled of artificial pine and previous occupants. Jason adjusted the rearview mirror, focusing on the entrance of the towering glass building that housed Parker Financial Advisors, Richard Parker's private consulting firm that operated alongside his CFO duties at Harrington Industries. A clear conflict of interest that Lisa had overlooked until now. The November wind whipped discarded coffee cups across the parking lot, clouds hanging low and threatening over the Chicago skyline. Jason checked his watch. 11:47. According to Lisa's intel, Parker had a standing lunch appointment on Thursdays at Alinea, one of Chicago's most exclusive restaurants. The building's revolving door spun, disgorging Parker onto the sidewalk, tall, immaculately dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Jason's monthly rent. His silver hair caught the weak sunlight as he checked his watch, then raised a hand to hail a passing taxi. Jason gave him 30 seconds head start before pulling into traffic to follow, maintaining 3 cars between them at all times. This had become his routine for the past week, tracking Parker's movements, documenting meetings, photographing interactions. The skills he'd developed during his brief stint as a private investigator are returning with surprising ease. In the passenger seat lay a camera with a telephoto lens borrowed from a photographer friend, a notebook filled with times and locations, and a prepaid phone Lisa had provided for secure communications. The taxi turned onto North Halsted, pulling up outside Alinea's understated facade. Parker stepped out, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease, then checked his surroundings with the wary precision of someone accustomed to being watched. Jason parked half a block away, positioning himself with a clear view of the restaurant entrance, and lifted the camera. Parker wasn't dining alone. A sleek black Bentley pulled up moments later, and a man Jason recognized from Lisa's files emerged. Harold Chen of Meridian Corp, Harrington Industries' largest competitor. The two men shook hands with the reserved familiarity of long-standing acquaintances rather than new business contacts, disappearing into the restaurant together. Jason snapped a dozen photos in rapid succession, capturing the handshake, The easy body language, the leather portfolio tucked under Parker's arm, embossed with Harrington's logo. He reached for the phone, texting Lisa. Parker meeting Chen at Alinea now, brought Harrington documents. Three dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, need proof of what's exchanged. If you can get photos through window, perfect. If not, wait and follow Chen. He may be less cautious. Jason tucked the phone away and settled in for the wait, adjusting the camera settings for the low light conditions near the restaurant windows. This wasn't how he'd imagined spending his vacation days. The precious time off he'd accumulated over months of 6-day work weeks at the maintenance company. He'd planned to take Emma to the Wisconsin Dells, maybe catch the indoor water parks before winter fully set in. Instead, he was conducting corporate espionage for a dying CEO he'd known less than a month. The absurdity wasn't lost on him, nor was the risk. If Parker discovered him, there would be consequences. For his job, possibly his reputation, maybe even his safety. Parker didn't strike him as the type to employ physical intimidation, but men like him had other weapons. Lawsuits, influence, the power to destroy livelihoods with a single phone call. Jason's phone buzzed. Not Lisa's secure line, but his personal cell. Emma's school. His stomach tightened as he answered, keeping his voice low. Mrs. Winter's apologetic tones filtered through. Emma had a fever. Could he pick her up? He glanced at the restaurant, weighing obligations. Parker and Chen would be inside for at least an hour. Emma needed him now. The choice was simple, even as he felt the opportunity slipping away. Family came first. Always. He started the car, pulling away from the curb, already mentally calculating the fastest route to Emma's school. 20 minutes later, Jason carried a flushed, drowsy Emma through the door of their apartment, her small arms wrapped around his neck, her forehead burning against his shoulder. Patel from next door met them in the hallway, concern etching her kind face. Emma's been asking for you, poor lamb. I can watch her tomorrow if you need to work. The offer was tempting, but Jason shook his head. I'll call in. She needs me more than they do. Inside, he settled Emma on the couch with blankets and the stuffed rabbit she'd loved since infancy, her eyes bright with fever as he measured out children's Tylenol. What about the lady in the tower? Emma's voice was scratchy. You were supposed to help her today. I'll help her tomorrow. Today, I'm helping you. He smoothed her hair back from her forehead, the gesture automatic, essential. Emma's eyes were already drifting closed, the medication taking effect. Dad, did you tell her about the stars? I told her. She said they might be working. Her soup's making her stronger. Emma smiled, satisfied, before sleep claimed her. Jason watched her for a moment, the rise and fall of her chest, the splash of freckles across her nose. So like Rachel's that sometimes it caught him off guard. Then he reached for the secure phone, texting Lisa. Emergency with Emma. Had to leave. We'll try again tomorrow. The response came almost immediately. Is she okay? The concern surprised him, genuine, without the perfunctory quality most adults adopted when asking about children they didn't know. Fever, nothing serious, but I need to be with her. Of course. Lisa's reply seemed to carry more weight than the simple words suggested. Family first. We'll regroup when she's better. Jason set the phone aside, settling into the armchair next to Emma's sleeping form. Outside, rain began to patter against the windows, the sky darkening to premature evening. He'd lost today's opportunity, but Parker would meet with Chen again. Men like them, engaged in whatever they were planning, didn't limit themselves to a single conversation. In the penthouse 40 floors above the city, Lisa stared at her phone, processing Jason's update. A sick child trumped corporate espionage. Of course it did. She couldn't begrudge him that priority and wouldn't want to. Yet disappointment settled like a stone in her stomach. The board meeting loomed just 9 days away. They needed evidence, concrete and irrefutable. She moved to the window, watching rain streak the glass, transforming the city lights into watercolor smudges. The chemo from yesterday left her nauseated and exhausted, her body a traitor, responding to commands with increasing reluctance. Yet her mind remained sharp, fueled by purpose in a new emotion she was reluctant to name. Connection. The thought of Emma, a child she'd never met but whose soup she'd eaten, whose drawings adorned her refrigerator, lying sick with fever, stirred something protective in her chest. In another life, she might have had a daughter like Emma. Another choice at 30, another path taken. Less time in boardrooms, more time. Where? She couldn't even imagine the alternative. Her identity had been so thoroughly enmeshed with Harrington Industries that removing it left only skeleton. Lisa returned to the dining table war room, forcing her attention back to the documents. Parker's patterns were emerging. Regular meetings with Meridian Corp executives, suspicious transfers to offshore accounts, steadily selling off Harrington assets to shell companies that trace back to Meridian's parent corporation. Textbook corporate sabotage, executed with the precision of someone who believed they'd never be caught. Her phone rang. Her attorney, Catherine Wells, whose discreet handling of high-profile corporate cases had saved more than one CEO from disaster. Lisa put her on speaker, continuing to sort through financial statements as Catherine's crisp voice filled the room. "I've reviewed the documentation you sent. It's compelling but circumstantial. Without direct evidence of Parker's communication with Meridian or proof he's falsified documents, it won't be enough to remove him." Lisa's fingers tightened around a spreadsheet detailing Parker's most recent asset liquidation. "He's scheduled another meeting with Harold Chen next Tuesday. I'm working on getting photographic evidence." "Working on it how exactly?" Catherine's tone sharpened with professional concern. "If you've hired private investigators without proper legal clearance, I'm handling it," Lisa interrupted. "The less you know about methods, the better. Just be ready to move when I have what we need." The line went quiet for a moment before Catherine continued. "The board members I've spoken with are divided. Tanaka and Whitman are firmly in Parker's camp. Martinez and Goldstein are withholding judgment. Reynolds might be swayed to support you if the evidence is strong enough." Lisa processed this information, mentally mapping the board alliances. 5 key votes, 3 others who would follow the prevailing wind. They needed Reynolds plus at least 2 of the fence sitters. "What's Parker telling them about my absence? That your health is declining rapidly and you're unable to fulfill your duties. He's positioned himself as the reluctant savior stepping in to prevent market instability." Catherine paused. "The rumors about your condition are circulating, Lisa. If you're planning to fight this, you need to make a public appearance, show the flag." The suggestion sent a wave of nausea through Lisa that had nothing to do with chemotherapy. The thought of presenting herself, thin, weak, obviously ill, before the sharks of the business world made her skin crawl. Her strength had always been her armor. Vulnerability was unthinkable. "I'll consider it." Lisa's tone made it clear the subject was closed. "Keep working the board. I'll get you what you need on Parker." After ending the call, Lisa sank into a chair, suddenly overwhelmed by fatigue so profound it felt like gravity had doubled. Fighting Parker required strength she wasn't sure she possessed anymore. Fighting cancer demanded whatever reserves remained. Fighting both simultaneously seemed impossible. Yet surrender to either was unthinkable. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "Emma's asking if you'd like another drawing. Something about a castle this time." The message cut through Lisa's exhaustion like sunlight through fog. "I'd love one. Tell her I've put her superhero picture on my refrigerator." The exchange was trivial, mundane even, yet it anchored her. A sick child thinking of her, a dying stranger, with enough concern to offer artwork. The simplicity of the connection stood in stark contrast to the complex machinations of corporate warfare spread across her dining table. Lisa closed her eyes, summoning resolve from some hidden reservoir. She'd built Harrington Industries from the remnants of her father's failing construction company, transforming it through sheer will and strategic brilliance. She'd survived boardroom coups before. She'd survived this one too, long enough at least to ensure Parker didn't. For the first time in weeks, Lisa reached for her makeup bag, applied foundation to hollow cheeks, mascara to thinning lashes. She arranged a video call with her executive assistant, Margaret, whose shock at Lisa's appearance was carefully concealed behind professional composure. "Margaret, I need you to quietly arrange meetings with board members. Individual discussions, off-site, nothing on the official calendar. And I need complete updates on all active projects, particularly those Parker has been directly involved with." Margaret's efficiency was immediate and reassuring. "I'll have preliminary reports to you by tomorrow morning." The relief in her voice was evident. Her boss was back. The ship had a captain again. Is there anything else you need? Lisa hesitated, then made a decision. Yes, I need a car sent to this address tomorrow afternoon. She texted Jason's information. Someone's daughter is ill. Have the driver deliver one of those stuffed bears from the company store. And some books, appropriate for a 7-year-old. Use my personal account, not the company's. After ending the call, Lisa felt something she hadn't experienced since the diagnosis. Purpose extending beyond her own survival or the company's fate. Small purpose, perhaps. Insignificant in the grand scheme, but real nonetheless. The following day dawned clear and cold. November sunshine brittle against Chicago's steel and glass canyons. Emma's fever had broken overnight, leaving her weak but alert enough to sit propped against pillows, colored pencils scattered across the blankets as she worked on her latest masterpiece, a castle with a queen looking out from the highest tower. The doorbell's ring startled them both. Jason checked the security peephole, confusion furrowing his brow at the sight of a uniformed driver holding a large bag emblazoned with the Harrington Industries logo and what appeared to be a massive teddy bear. Delivery for Emma Cole, the driver announced when Jason opened the door. From Ms. Harrington. Emma's eyes widened to perfect circles as Jason accepted the packages. The bear was ridiculous, nearly as tall as Emma herself, wearing a miniature Harrington hard hat and holding a tiny construction sign reading "Get Well Soon." The bag contained books, not just one or two, but an entire library of children's classics, each with a personalized bookplate. For Emma, from Lisa. Dad, she remembered my name. Emma's voice held the wonder of a child discovering someone important had noticed her existence. Of course she did, Jason replied, helping her arrange the bear beside her on the couch. You've been making her soup for weeks, but she's a queen. Emma's logic was impeccable, her worldview still shaped by fairy tales where royalty rarely remembered commoners' names. Queens are busy. Jason smiled, something warming in his chest at his daughter's assessment. She is busy, but not too busy to think about you. Emma considered this, then nodded with the sage acceptance of childhood. That's because she's a good queen, not like in the stories where they're mean. She held up her drawing. Do you think she'll like her castle? I think she'll love it. Jason checked his watch, calculating. He'd promised to return to Parker surveillance today, but Emma, though improved, wasn't well enough for school. Mrs. Patel had offered to watch her, but after the gift from Lisa, he hesitated to leave before Emma could properly thank her benefactor. His dilemma resolved itself when his phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. Parker canceled lunch with board member Tanaka, heading to investment property in Lake Forest instead. Address to follow. Can you track? Jason texted back confirmation, then arranged with Mrs. Patel to watch Emma for a few hours. He knelt beside the couch, meeting his daughter's eyes seriously. I have to go help Ms. Harrington with something important. Mrs. Patel will stay with you until I get back. Not too long, I promise. Emma nodded, solemn. Is Ms. Harrington still fighting the bad guys? Jason paused, considering how to frame the corporate espionage in terms a 7-year-old could understand without learning lessons he didn't intend to teach. She's trying to protect what she built. Sometimes people try to take things that don't belong to them. Emma's face darkened with the righteous indignation of childhood. That's stealing. You're helping her catch a stealer. The simplification wasn't entirely inaccurate. That's right, Princess. I'm helping her catch a stealer. Emma nodded, satisfied with this explanation of adult complexities, and returned to her drawing, adding more windows to the tower where her queen resided. Jason kissed her forehead, still cool after the fever's departure, and gathered his camera equipment. Outside, he checked Lisa's text for the Lake Forest address, an affluent suburb north of Chicago, where the wealthy maintain second homes along the lake. The drive took nearly an hour, suburban sprawl giving way to increasingly exclusive neighborhoods, until Jason reached a gated community overlooking Lake Michigan. The address led to a modern glass and steel structure perched on a bluff, its architecture aggressively contemporary against the more traditional mansions surrounding it. Jason parked on a service road with a clear view of the property's entrance, adjusting his camera settings for distance shots. He didn't have to wait long. Parker's Maserati purred through the gates at 2:17, followed 10 minutes later by a silver Bentley. Chen again. Jason documented both arrivals, then waited, watching for activity through the floor-to-ceiling windows visible from his vantage point. Movement caught his eye. Parker and Chen in what appeared to be a home office, gesturing at documents spread across a desk. Jason texted Lisa. Both targets at Lake Forest property. Meeting in office. Clear view, but too far for document details. Her response came quickly. Property purchased 6 months ago through Shell Corporation. Not in Parker's name. Must be their secure meeting location. Can you get closer? Jason studied the property layout, considering angles and access points. The rear of the house faced the lake, with a terraced garden leading down to a private dock. No approach from that direction without a boat. The sides were exposed to neighboring properties. The front was gated with security cameras. Not without trespassing, and that crosses a line I'm not comfortable with. Too much risk. He could almost feel Lisa's frustration through the ensuing silence, imagining her weighing options in the penthouse war room. Finally understood. Continue observation. Document who comes and goes. We'll find another angle. For the next 3 hours, Jason maintained his surveillance, photographing the meeting through windows when possible, capturing Chen and Parker on the terrace overlooking the lake, drinks in hand, conversation animated but expressions unreadable at this distance. A third visitor arrived at 4:35, a woman Jason recognized from Lisa's files as Vanessa Tanaka, the board member whose lunch with Parker had been canceled. So not canceled, Jason realized. Just moved to a more private location. He documented Tanaka's arrival, her greeting of Chen, apparently familiar, and the three disappearing inside. This was significant. A Harrington board member meeting privately with the CEO of their largest competitor, arranged by the CFO attempting a takeover. The implications were clear, but implications weren't evidence. At 5:42, all three emerged, shaking hands with the satisfied air of people who had reached an agreement. Jason captured the moment in a series of rapid shots, then slid lower in his seat as they moved toward their respective vehicles. Once they had departed, he texted the update to Lisa, along with the best photos. Her response was immediate. This confirms they're coordinating. Tanaka was my father's oldest ally on the board. Her defection means at least 3 votes solidly against me. Come back to the penthouse. We need to regroup. The sun was setting as Jason navigated back toward the city, Chicago's skyline glittering to life against the darkening sky. He called Mrs. Patel to check on Emma, relieved to hear she was feeling better, had eaten dinner, and was now reading one of her new books. I should be home in about an hour, traffic permitting. When Jason arrived at the penthouse, he found Lisa seated at the dining table, surrounded by the now familiar landscape of documents and sticky notes. She looked worse than yesterday, the chemo taking its toll, her skin ashen beneath carefully applied makeup, eyes sunken despite her efforts to conceal the damage. But her posture remained upright, her focus laser sharp as she examined the photos he'd sent. Look at their body language, she noted, enlarging an image on her laptop. Tanaka and Chen have met before, many times judging by the familiarity. This isn't a new arrangement. Jason set his camera on the table, removing the memory card. I got video too. Not great quality at that distance, but you can see them clearly on the terrace. Lisa's eyes widened slightly, a spark of her former strategic brilliance igniting. Video adds another dimension. We can have it analyzed by experts, match it against their known appointments, build a timeline of conspiracy. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency despite their slight tremor. This is good. Not smoking gun, but foundation. Jason hesitated, then placed a folded piece of paper on the table beside her laptop. From Emma, to say thank you for the Barron books. Lisa paused, her attention shifting from corporate warfare to the colorful drawing. She opened it carefully, as if handling a precious artifact rather than a child's artwork. The castle dominated the page, improbably tall, with multiple towers and flags. At the highest window stood a figure wearing a crown and what appeared to be a cape, looking out over a landscape dotted with smaller figures. That's you, Jason explained, pointing to the crowned figure. And that's Emma and me down there visiting. She says every queen needs visitors or they get lonely in their towers. Something shifted in Lisa's expression, a softening around the eyes, a slight tremor at the corner of her mouth. She's very wise for 7. Jason nodded, pride evident in his posture. Too wise sometimes. Sees right through me most days. Lisa carefully propped the drawing against a stack of financial reports, incongruous color amid the monochrome seriousness of corporate documents. Would she like to visit for real? The question seemed to surprise Lisa as much as Jason. I mean, when she's feeling better, if you think it's appropriate. Jason considered the offer, weighing Emma's natural curiosity against Lisa's declining condition. She'd love to, but only if you're feeling up to it. She can be energetic. Lisa's laugh was unexpected, rusty still, but genuine. I built a multi-billion-dollar corporation from the ground up. I think I can handle a 7-year-old for an hour. The moment was interrupted by Lisa's phone, her attorney calling with updates. Jason gathered his equipment, sensing the shift back to business. I should get home to Emma. Text if you need anything else. Lisa nodded, already refocusing on the call, but her hand briefly touched the castle drawing as Jason left, a gesture so small he almost missed it. 3 days passed in a blur of surveillance and strategy. Jason tracked Parker's movements with increasing skill, documenting meetings with board members, offshore bankers, Meridian executives. Lisa worked her contacts, gathering intelligence, building a coalition of supporters within the company. The evidence mounted, Parker was systematically undermining Harrington Industries, positioning for a hostile takeover that would strip the company of its most valuable assets before selling the hollowed shell to Meridian Corp. On Sunday afternoon, Emma, fully recovered and bubbling with excitement, accompanied Jason to the penthouse for her much-anticipated visit with the Queen. Lisa had prepared with unexpected thoroughness, art supplies arranged on the coffee table, child-friendly snacks in the kitchen, even a collection of board games unearthed from some forgotten closet. Emma's eyes widened as she took in the penthouse's grandeur, but her attention quickly fixed on Lisa herself. "You don't look like you're in the pictures," she announced with the unfiltered honesty of childhood, studying Lisa's thin frame and headscarf-covered hair. Jason tensed, preparing to intervene, but Lisa smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face. "That's because those pictures were taken before I got sick. The real me is different now." Emma considered this, head tilted in evaluation. "You still look like a queen, though, just a different kind, like in the after part of the story." "What story is that?" Lisa led Emma toward the art supplies, her movements deliberate against the fatigue Jason knew was constant now. Emma settled on the floor, immediately reaching for markers. The ones where something hard happens, but then the Queen learns something important and saves everybody anyway. Those are the best ones. Lisa's eyes met Jason's over Emma's head, something unspoken passing between them. Acknowledgement that children sometimes cut through complexities adults had built entire psychological frameworks to avoid. "I like those stories too," Lisa agreed, lowering herself carefully to sit beside Emma. "What shall we draw today?" What happened next surprised Jason. For 2 hours, Lisa Harrington, corporate titan, ruthless negotiator, dying CEO, sat on her imported carpet and drew pictures with Emma. They created elaborate castles, fantastic creatures, and stories to accompany each illustration. Lisa listened with complete attention as Emma explained her 7-year-old philosophy of art, life, and the proper behavior of queens. Not once did Lisa check her phone or glance toward the dining table war room. Not once did she mention Parker or Harrington Industries or the board meeting now just 5 days away. Instead, she entered Emma's world completely, matching her enthusiasm, admiring her creations with the focused appreciation Emma craved. When it was time to leave, Emma hugged Lisa without hesitation, a quick, fierce embrace that Lisa returned after a moment of startled stillness. "I'll make you more soup tomorrow," Emma promised. "The stars are definitely working. You look better than last time." Lisa's smile held a mixture of emotions too complex to name. "I feel better when you're here. Thank you for visiting me." In the elevator descending from the penthouse, Emma clutched her portfolio of drawings. Collaborations with Lisa, she declared, too special for the refrigerator and worthy of proper storage. "Dad, she needs friends. She's all alone in that big place." Jason squeezed her hand. "She has us now. We're her friends." Emma nodded, satisfied with this solution to Lisa's isolation. "That's good. Everybody needs somebody who brings them soup when they're sick." The wisdom in this simple statement lingered with Jason long after Emma had gone to bed, her new drawings carefully preserved in a folder beside her bed. He found himself on the balcony of their modest apartment, staring up at the towering skyscraper, where Lisa's penthouse occupied the top floor. lights still burning despite the late hour. She was fighting two impossible battles simultaneously with a grace that humbled him. Not just surviving, but ensuring her legacy would survive too. His phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. Parker meeting Chen at Chicago Club tomorrow, 1 p.m. Private dining room. Server there owes me a favor. This could be our chance. Jason typed back confirmation, adding, Emma had a wonderful time today. Thank you. The response came quickly. I did too, more than I can remember in years. Bring her again when this is over? The question mark, so uncharacteristic of Lisa's usual decisive messaging, caught Jason's attention. She was planning for a future she might not have, making promises time might not allow her to keep. Yet the impulse behind it struck him as profoundly human. Yes, she'd like that. Monday dawned with gunmetal skies and a bitter wind that knifed through Jason's jacket as he positioned himself across from the Chicago Club, one of the city's oldest and most exclusive private establishments. The membership roster read like a who's who of Midwestern power and influence, access granted only through legacy or extraordinary achievement. Lisa had been one of the first women admitted, a fact she'd mentioned with carefully modulated pride. Jason checked his watch. 12:47. Parker would arrive soon. The plan was simple but precise. Lisa's contact among the waitstaff would ensure Jason received access to the private dining room after Parker and Chen concluded their meeting. Any documents left behind, any evidence of their conspiracy, he would document or, if possible, acquire. Parker's car arrived at 12:52, the CFO emerging with the confident stride of a man accustomed to rarefied air. Chen followed 7 minutes later. Jason photographed both arrivals, then settled in to wait, reviewing the key points Lisa had emphasized. Focus on any documents bearing Harrington's letterhead. Look for signature pages. Note any maps or property listings that might indicate assets being targeted. At 2:41, Chen departed alone, his expression unreadable behind designer sunglasses. Parker followed at 2:57, phone pressed to his ear, gesticulating with his free hand in a manner suggesting agitation. Jason captured the departures, then waited 10 additional minutes before approaching the club's service entrance as Lisa had instructed. The kitchen was organized chaos, chefs calling orders, servers moving with practiced efficiency between stations. A slender man with salt and pepper hair intercepted Jason just inside the door. Ms. Harrington said you'd come. Private dining room 3. They've left but not been cleared yet. You have 5 minutes before I send staff in. Jason navigated through the kitchen and down a carpeted hallway lined with portraits of founding members, stern-faced men from another century. Private dining room 3 was unlocked, the interior still bearing evidence of the recently concluded meal. Empty wine glasses, crumpled napkins, the lingering scent of expensive cologne. He moved quickly, scanning the table for anything left behind. Nothing on the visible surface. He checked beside chairs, under the table, nothing. Disappointment settled in his stomach until he spotted the wastepaper basket tucked discreetly in the corner. Inside, crumpled papers, a discarded menu, and something that made his pulse quicken. Torn fragments of what appeared to be Harrington Industries letterhead. Jason carefully retrieved the pieces, laying them on the table to form a partial document. A contract draft, heavily annotated in what he recognized as Parker's handwriting from samples Lisa had shown him. The header was intact. Asset Transfer Agreement, Harrington Properties Division. The signature line was visible, with what appeared to be Lisa's signature already in place. He photographed the fragments individually and collectively, then carefully collected them into an envelope he'd brought for this purpose. This was what they'd been waiting for. Evidence of documents being prepared with Lisa's forged signature, authorizing the sale of company assets. A soft knock at the door signaled his time was up. Jason pocketed the envelope, nodding thanks to the waiting server as he slipped back into the hallway and out through the kitchen. Outside, he texted Lisa, "Got something, torn contract with your signature. Appears to be property division sale. Coming to you now." Her response was immediate. "This could be it. Hurry." Jason was 3 blocks from the Chicago Club when instinct made him check his rearview mirror. A black SUV had pulled out behind him, keeping pace despite opportunities to pass. He made a right turn at the next intersection. The SUV followed. Left at the next, still there. His PI training kicked in, alarm bells ringing. He was being followed and not particularly subtly. He reached for his phone to alert Lisa, but before he could dial, the SUV accelerated, pulling alongside his rental car at the next stoplight. The passenger window lowered, revealing a face he didn't recognize. Middle-aged, expressionless, wearing the anonymous suit of corporate security. "Mr. Cole?" The man's voice was neutral, professional. "Mr. Parker would like a word with you. Please pull over at the next corner." Jason's mind raced through options. He could refuse, continue driving, but to what end? If Parker knew who he was, knew he was working with Lisa, then the element of surprise was already lost. Better to understand what they were dealing with. He pulled over as instructed, the SUV stopping behind him. The suited man approached his window. "Mr. Parker is very interested in your recent activities on behalf of Ms. Harrington, particularly your visit to the Chicago Club just now." Jason remained silent, assessing. The man continued, tone conversational, but undercut with steel. "This is a courtesy call, Mr. Cole. A professional warning. Ms. Harrington is terminally ill and not thinking clearly. Getting involved in corporate matters beyond your expertise could have serious consequences for your career, your reputation." He paused, significance hanging in the air. "Even for custody arrangements regarding your daughter." The threat, implicit but unmistakable, sent ice through Jason's veins. How Parker had discovered Emma's existence was irrelevant. That he would use her as leverage revealed everything about the man's character. The suited man handed Jason a business card. "Mr. Parker is prepared to be generous. Compensation for your time, a recommendation to the building management company that owns your current contract, perhaps even assistance with your daughter's educational needs. All he asks is that you step away from this situation." Jason studied the card, blank except for a phone number. "Consider the offer carefully, Mr. Cole, for everyone's sake." The man returned to the SUV, which pulled away smoothly into traffic, leaving Jason gripping the steering wheel hard enough to whiten his knuckles. 20 minutes later, Jason entered Lisa's penthouse to find her pacing the living room, phone pressed to her ear. "I don't care what time it is in Tokyo, wake Tanaka up. Tell her it's regarding her meeting with Harold Chen at Parker's Lake Forest property." "I have photographs." She ended the call as Jason placed the envelope on the coffee table. "They know Parker had me followed from the Chicago Club, sent someone to deliver a warning." Lisa's expression hardened. The vulnerable woman who had drawn pictures with Emma vanishing beneath the CEO's calculating mask. What kind of warning? The kind that mentioned Emma. Jason kept his voice level despite the rage simmering beneath. "He's offering bribes to walk away, threatening consequences if I don't." Lisa went very still, a dangerous stillness that reminded Jason she hadn't built a corporate empire through compromise and gentle persuasion. "He threatened your daughter?" "Not explicitly, just mentioned custody arrangements could be complicated for someone in my position." Jason opened the envelope, spreading the torn contract fragments on the table. "But I got what we needed, your signature, forged on a document authorizing sale of Harrington's property division. The contract is torn, but the letterhead and signature page are clear." Lisa examined the fragments, her focus absolute despite the threat to Jason and Emma hovering between them. "This is it. Proof of fraud, forgery of my signature, unauthorized sale of company assets. Combined with the photos of Parker meeting Chen and Tanaka, we have enough." She looked up, meeting Jason's eyes directly. "But Parker making this move changes things. He knows we're building a case. He'll accelerate his timeline, and he's shown he's willing to target your family." The unspoken question hung in the air. Was it worth continuing? Was Lisa's company, her legacy, worth risking Emma's security? Jason moved to the window, looking out over the city as evening lights began to flicker on across the skyline. "When Rachel was dying, she made me promise something else, besides teaching Emma about the third kind of people. She made me promise I'd show Emma a world worth fighting for, that I wouldn't let her grow up believing you should walk away from what's right because it's difficult or dangerous." He turned back to Lisa, decision made. "We finish this, but we need to be smart. Parker's shown his hand. He's desperate enough to make threats. That means he knows we're close to stopping him." Lisa nodded, relief and resolve mingling in her expression. She moved to her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. I'm calling in every favor I've accumulated in 30 years of business. We'll have security for you and Emma, discreet but effective, and we accelerate our timeline too. The board meeting is in 4 days. I'm going to request it be moved up to tomorrow. No time for Parker to manufacture new evidence or pressure more board members. We go in with everything we have. The photos, this contract, the financial trail. One decisive strike. Jason watched her transform before his eyes. Illness temporarily banished by purpose and righteous anger. The formidable CEO emerging from the dying woman like steel from fire. Tomorrow then, I'll need to make arrangements for Emma. We'll have security at her school, at your apartment. Nothing obvious, nothing to frighten her. Lisa's tone left no room for debate. Parker threatened the wrong child. He's about to learn that nothing in this world is more dangerous than giving me someone to fight for beyond myself. The declaration settled between them. A line drawn, a battle joined. Whatever came next, there would be no retreat. For Lisa, it was about legacy, justice, refusing to allow Parker to destroy what she had built. For Jason, it was about showing Emma that the world contained not just those who took and those who gave, but those who stood firm when standing mattered most. Outside, Chicago's lights blurred against encroaching fog, towers disappearing into low clouds until only the highest floors remained visible, islands of illumination in a sea of gathering darkness. Inside the penthouse, Lisa and Jason continued working long into the night, preparing for the confrontation that would determine not just the fate of Harrington Industries, but the nature of the legacy Lisa Harrington would leave behind. In the glow of laptop screens and beneath the weight of corporate documents, an unlikely alliance had become something neither had anticipated. A friendship forged in crisis, strengthened by mutual respect, and sustained by the simple wisdom of a 7-year-old who believed in star-shaped noodles and the healing power of soup. Tomorrow would bring either victory or defeat. Tonight was for preparation, for gathering strength, for remembering why the battle mattered in the first place. Not just for a company, but for the principle that some things, integrity, truth, justice, were worth fighting for even when the fighter knew they wouldn't live to enjoy the peace that followed. Morning light spilled through the Harrington Industries boardroom windows, illuminating the polished mahogany table where Lisa's executive career had begun 23 years earlier as her father's reluctant protege. Now she sat alone, 30 minutes before the emergency board meeting she'd demanded, reviewing documents arranged with military precision. Each folder contained evidence, photos, financial records, the reconstructed contract with her forged signature. Her attorney, Catherine, stood by the windows, phone pressed to her ear, voice low as she coordinated final preparations. The room still bore traces of Lisa's influence, despite her months-long absence. The ergonomic chairs she'd insisted on after an executive retreated complained of back pain. The state-of-the-art presentation system installed when she'd grown tired of fumbling with cables before international calls. The subtle lighting she'd designed to eliminate unflattering shadows during video conferences. Small touches that had once seemed significant, now rendered trivial by mortality's harsh perspective. Lisa's reflection in the darkened monitor across the table startled her, a ghost of her former self in an expertly tailored suit that hung too loosely despite the tailor's valiant efforts yesterday. The silk scarf wrapped around her head couldn't disguise what chemotherapy had taken, but her makeup was flawless, armor against pitying glances. She'd insisted on stiletto heels despite Catherine's practical concerns, despite legs that trembled with fatigue. Image mattered today. Perception could determine the outcome as surely as evidence. The medication she'd taken an hour ago dulled the worst of the pain, allowing her to sit upright without wincing, to breathe without each inhalation becoming a negotiation with her failing body. It would last through the meeting if she was lucky. If not, well, that possibility had been accounted for too. Jason had escorted her to the building at 7 a.m., Emma safely tucked away with Mrs. Patel and the security team Lisa had hired. Their goodbye in the lobby had been brief, but weighted with unspoken understanding. "I'll be here when you're finished," he'd said simply. Lisa had nodded, touched his arm briefly, connection without sentimentality, then squared her shoulders and stepped into the elevator alone, ascending to the battlefield she'd commanded for decades. At 8:57, the boardroom door opened. Thomas Reynolds entered first. Silver-haired, perpetually tanned from weekends on his sailboat, senior enough to remember when Lisa's father ran the company. His eyebrows rose fractionally at the sight of her, composure slipping before professional courtesy reasserted itself. Lisa, how unexpected. We'd heard you were greatly exaggerated, Lisa interrupted, her voice steady despite the effort it required. Please take your usual seat. We have much to discuss this morning. Reynolds complied, studying her with barely concealed curiosity as other board members filtered in. Martinez with his omnipresent legal pad, Goldstein checking his Apple Watch with practiced disinterest, Chen tapping away at his tablet. Each registered varying degrees of surprise at Lisa's presence, carefully masked beneath corporate pleasantries. The temperature in the room shifted when Vanessa Tanaka entered, her stride faltering momentarily upon seeing Lisa at the head of the table. Their eyes locked, mentor and protege, now adversaries. You look well, Vanessa offered, the platitude falling flat against reality. Appearances can be deceiving, Lisa replied, holding Tanaka's gaze until the other woman looked away first. A small victory, but Lisa collected it nonetheless. Every advantage mattered today. At precisely 9:05, 5 minutes late, a power move Lisa had anticipated, Richard Parker strode into the boardroom, confidence emanating from his bespoke suit to his freshly polished Oxfords. His momentary freeze upon seeing Lisa lasted microseconds, recovery so smooth only someone watching for it would notice. Lisa, what a pleasant surprise. We weren't sure you'd be joining us. It's my company, Richard. Where else would I be? Lisa gestured toward his usual seat, reclaiming authority through simple courtesy. Shall we begin? I've asked Catherine to distribute some materials that require the board's immediate attention. Parker's eyes narrowed slightly as Catherine placed identical folders before each board member. Lisa watched his face carefully, noting the precise moment comprehension dawned, the slight tightening around his eyes, the barely perceptible straightening of his spine. He hadn't expected her to move this quickly or arrive so prepared. Before we review these materials, Richard spoke with practiced smoothness. Perhaps we should address the reason I initially called this meeting, the leadership transition plan, given Lisa's unfortunate health situation. His gaze swept the table, seeking allies. For the good of the company, we need stable leadership during this difficult time. Lisa allowed his words to settle, noting which board members nodded agreement. Tanaka and Whitman, as expected, and which remained neutral. Reynolds and Martinez, still undecided. Then she opened her folder, removed a single sheet of paper, and placed it precisely before her. By all means, Richard, let's discuss leadership. Beginning with this, a contract bearing my forged signature, authorizing the sale of Harrington's property division to a shell corporation that traces back to Meridian Corp, our largest competitor. She tapped the document with one manicured nail. Would you care to explain how my signature appears on a document drafted 3 weeks after I stopped coming to the office? The boardroom went silent. Parker's expression remained neutral, but a muscle twitched in his jaw, a tell Lisa had observed in previous confrontations. A serious accusation, Lisa. Perhaps your illness has affected your memory. That document was signed before your leave began. Catherine stepped forward, distributing additional papers. This is Ms. Harrington's complete medical record for the past 3 months, including her hospitalization on October 14th, the date this contract is dated. She was under observation at Northwestern Memorial, as 6 witnesses can attest. She physically could not have signed this document. Reynolds flipped through the pages, frown deepening as he read. And the connection to Meridian Corp? Lisa nodded to Catherine, who tapped a command on her tablet. The boardroom screen illuminated with photographs, Parker and Harold Chen at various locations, Tanaka joining them at the Lake Forest property. The surveillance photos Jason had taken over the past weeks, crisp and damning. Board members shifted uncomfortably, eyes moving between the photos and Parker, whose composure was visibly cracking. Goldstein removed his glasses, polishing them unnecessarily. Who authorized this surveillance? Parker demanded, voice rising slightly. This is an invasion of privacy, possibly illegal. I authorized it, Lisa interrupted. When financial irregularities suggested corporate espionage, I exercised my authority as CEO to investigate. The evidence points to a coordinated effort to systematically dismantle Harrington Industries through asset sales to Meridian Corp-controlled entities, with profits diverted to offshore accounts. She nodded to Catherine again, who distributed financial records highlighting suspicious transactions. Martinez studied them with his attorney's precision, making rapid notations on his legal pad. Reynolds leaned toward Goldstein, murmuring questions that the CFO answered with increasingly troubled expressions. Parker stood abruptly, palms flat against the table. This is absurd. Lisa's illness has clearly affected her judgment. These so-called irregularities are standard business practices I implemented during her absence to streamline operations. Her paranoia is, my illness has clarified my judgment, Richard, not clouded it. Lisa's voice remained steady, each word precisely measured. Dying has a way of cutting through distraction. When you have limited time, you focus on what matters. Right now, that's preventing you from destroying what I've spent my life building. She turned to the board members, meeting each gaze directly. I built Harrington Industries from a failing construction company into a global enterprise. I've generated billions in shareholder value, created thousands of jobs. I've earned the right to determine my successor, and it will not be someone who forges my signature and sells company assets to competitors. Lisa pushed a button on the conference phone. Send him in, please. The boardroom door opened to admit Harold Chen, CEO of Meridian Corp., accompanied by two individuals carrying legal boxes. Chen's presence sent a ripple of shock through the room, board members exchanging confused glances as Parker's face drained of color. Mr. Chen has agreed to cooperate fully with our investigation, Lisa explained. In exchange for immunity from prosecution, he's provided complete documentation of his arrangements with Mr. Parker and certain board members. Her gaze shifted meaningfully to Tanaka, whose composure finally cracked. Eyes darting toward emergency exits as if contemplating escape. Chen set a flash drive on the table, sliding it toward the center with manicured precision. The evidence is comprehensive. Emails, wire transfers, meeting recordings, everything detailing the planned dismantling of Harrington Industries for Meridian's benefit, with significant personal enrichment for the collaborators. Parker's professional facade shattered completely, rage breaking through. You treacherous bastard, his voice tight with fury as he glared at Chen. We had an agreement. Business is business, Richard, Chen replied with elegant indifference. Ms. Harrington made a more compelling offer. My board felt cooperation was the prudent course. Lisa allowed herself a moment of satisfaction as the balance of power shifted palpably. She'd gambled everything on Chen's business pragmatism. His willingness to sacrifice Parker to preserve Meridian's market position and avoid prosecution. The gamble had paid off. I may be dying, Richard, but I'm still CEO. Lisa's voice carried the quiet authority that had defined her leadership style for decades. And I'll make damn sure the last thing I do is protect this company from people like you. The next hour unfolded with the clinical precision of corporate execution. Evidence presented, questions answered, accusations denied, then gradually admitted as the weight of documentation rendered denials futile. Throughout, Lisa remained upright despite increasing pain, refusing to show weakness even as the medication's effectiveness waned. When Reynolds finally called for a vote on Parker's immediate termination and investigation by outside counsel, the outcome was unanimous. Even Tanaka, sensing the inevitable, aligned herself with the majority. Parker was escorted from the premises by security, personal effects to be shipped later after thorough review. Tanaka submitted her resignation without prompting, avoiding Lisa's gaze as she departed. As the boardroom emptied, only Reynolds remained, studying Lisa with newfound respect. That was masterfully handled. Not many CEOs could orchestrate something this complex while fighting stage 4 cancer. Lisa closed her folder with deliberate movements, conserving energy. I've had practice fighting battles others thought unwinnable. It's amazing what becomes possible when surrender isn't an option. Reynolds nodded, understanding passing between them. What happens next? With the company? And with you? I've prepared a succession plan. Lisa removed a sealed envelope from her briefcase. Margaret Chen from operations. She knows the company inside out, has the strategic vision, and possesses the one quality I've found most valuable in leadership. She cares more about what she's building than her personal glory. Reynolds accepted the envelope, weighing it thoughtfully. And the foundation you've mentioned, The one for families facing medical crises? Already incorporated, funding secured, board of directors selected. Lisa stood carefully, using the table for support without making it obvious. I've spent my life building things, Thomas. I don't intend to stop just because the clock is running down. When Lisa finally emerged from the boardroom, the victory that had sustained her through the meeting evaporated, leaving only bone-deep exhaustion. Catherine steadied her in the elevator, concern evident in her usually stoic expression. The car is waiting. Hospital or home? Home. Lisa leaned against the elevator wall, eyes closed briefly. I need to see someone first. Jason was waiting in the lobby as promised, rising from a leather chair when the elevator doors opened. One look at Lisa's face told him everything he needed to know. Victory had exacted its price. Without hesitation, he moved to her side, offering support disguised as companionship as they crossed the marble expanse toward the exit. Emma will want to hear about the good guys winning, he said quietly as they reached the car. Lisa managed a tired smile despite the pain radiating through her body. Tell her the queen vanquished the dragon, and that her soup definitely helped. The days following Parker's removal passed in a blur of legal proceedings, board restructuring, and carefully managed press releases. Lisa participated from the penthouse, strength fading but mind still razor sharp, guiding the transition to Margaret Chen's leadership with meticulous attention to detail. Parker's arrest on charges of fraud, embezzlement, and corporate espionage made national news. Harrington Industries stock rallying as investors gained confidence in the company's renewed stability. Through it all, Jason remained a constant presence. Driver, courier, witness to the corporate aftermath, shielding Lisa from unnecessary stresses as her condition deteriorated despite renewed treatment efforts. Emma visited regularly, bringing drawings and stories that provided respite from legal documents and succession plans. On a crisp December morning, with snow falling gently outside the penthouse windows, Lisa finalized the details of the Harrington Foundation with her attorney and financial advisors. The foundation's mission was specific and personal, supporting single-parent families facing medical crises, with particular emphasis on housing stability, childcare assistance, and medical navigation services. The endowment, nearly half of Lisa's personal fortune, would ensure operations for decades. When the advisors departed, Lisa turned to Jason, who had observed the proceedings from the periphery. There's one more position to fill. The foundation needs a director, someone who understands both sides of the equation, someone who's lived through medical crisis as a single parent, who knows what practical help actually looks like. Jason's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief as he realized her intention. I fix air conditioners, Lisa. You're asking me to run a multi-million-dollar foundation. I'm not qualified. You're more qualified than anyone. Lisa's voice was weaker now, but her conviction remained undiminished. You know what it's like to raise a child alone, to choose between medication and groceries, to be invisible to everyone who should care. That's the qualification that matters. I don't know how to run an organization like that. Jason's protest was practical rather than dismissive, concern furrowing his brow. Then learn. Lisa met his gaze directly, challenge evident despite her fragility. Hire people who do know, but make sure every decision, every dollar, every policy gets filtered through the question. Would this have helped Jason Cole? Would this have helped Emma? Jason was silent, weighing the offer against the magnitude of the responsibility. It wasn't what he'd imagined for himself. His aspirations had always been modest, focused on Emma's well-being rather than personal ambition. Yet something in Lisa's expression stopped him from refusing outright. The intensity of purpose that transcended her failing body, the determination to create meaning from suffering. I'll think about it, he finally said, unwilling to commit but equally unwilling to disappoint her. Lisa nodded, accepting this temporary evasion. Bring Emma tomorrow? I have something for her. The following afternoon, Jason brought Emma to the penthouse, now transformed into something resembling a hospital room. A hospital bed had replaced Lisa's custom mattress, medical equipment clustered discreetly nearby, nurses rotating in 8-hour shifts. Lisa herself was propped against pillows, thinner than ever, but she had insisted on proper clothes rather than hospital gowns, maintaining dignity through deliberate choices. Emma approached the bed without hesitation or fear, accustomed now to Lisa's changing appearance. The adults in her world had explained in age-appropriate terms that Ms. Harrington was very sick and would not get better, that their visits mattered precisely because time was limited. Emma had absorbed this information with the remarkable resilience of childhood, accepting mortality as another fact to be integrated rather than feared. "I brought you a new drawing," Emma announced, presenting her latest creation, a detailed scene showing Lisa, Jason, and Emma having a picnic beneath fantastically colored trees. In the picture, Lisa stood tall and strong, no evidence of illness, a crown still perched atop flowing hair. Lisa accepted the drawing with genuine delight, studying it carefully. "This is beautiful, Emma. Is this a magic forest?" Emma nodded solemnly. "It's where people go when they need to rest and get stronger. The trees have special powers." She pointed to spiraling patterns she'd drawn on the trunks. "That's where the magic comes out." Lisa exchanged a glance with Jason, both recognizing Emma's attempt to create healing through imagination. "I love it. I'll keep it right here so I can look at it." She reached for a wrapped package beside her bed, handing it to Emma. "I have something for you too. I had it made specially." Emma unwrapped the package carefully, revealing a hardbound book with her name embossed in gold on the cover. Inside were blank pages interspersed with Lisa's handwriting, elegant script forming the beginning of a story. Emma traced the words with her finger, eyes wide. "It's a story I started, but it needs a special co-author to finish it." Lisa's voice softened. "It's about a brave explorer named Emma who discovers a hidden kingdom and helps the queen remember what really matters. I thought maybe you could write the middle and the end when you're a bit older." Emma clutched the book to her chest, understanding the significance beyond her 7 years. "I'll write the best middle and end ever. Promise." Her fierce determination brought unexpected tears to Lisa's eyes, quickly blinked away before Emma could notice. "I know you will." Lisa reached out, squeezing Emma's hand gently. "You know, Emma, I've been thinking about what you said before, about queens needing visitors so they don't get lonely in their towers. You were right. That's the most important wisdom anyone's ever shared with me." Emma beamed, pride straightening her small shoulders. "Dad says wisdom is when you know something important without having to learn it the hard way. Your dad is very smart." Lisa's gaze shifted to Jason, something unspoken passing between them. Sometimes the hardest lessons come from the youngest teachers. After Emma had explored the book further and shared stories about school and friends, a nurse appeared discreetly in the doorway, signal that Lisa needed rest. Emma hugged her carefully, mindful of tubes and wires, then retreated to the living room with her new treasure, leaving the adults to speak privately. "Have you thought about my offer?" Lisa asked once Emma was out of earshot, fatigue evident in her voice despite efforts to conceal it. Jason nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about nothing else." He paused, gathering thoughts. "Why me, Lisa? Really? You know dozens of qualified executives, people with foundation experience, people from your world." Lisa adjusted her position slightly, wincing. "That's precisely why it can't be them. The Harrington Foundation isn't about maintaining the status quo or providing tax deductions for wealthy donors. It's about practical help delivered without judgment or condescension." Her gaze held his, unwavering despite her weakness. "It's about people like you, not people like me." The simplicity of her statement silenced his objections. Lisa continued, voice dropping to ensure Emma wouldn't overhear. "The penthouse is part of the foundation assets, not to live in, but to sell or rent out. The proceeds go to Emma's educational trust. Non-negotiable." "Lisa, we can't accept." "You can, you will." Lisa's CEO persona flickered briefly through her illness. "That child has more wisdom in her 7 years than I found in 45. She deserves to know that wisdom has value, real value, the kind that can pay for college, a house, whatever she dreams up." Jason wanted to argue further but recognized the futility. This wasn't charity in Lisa's mind. It was investment in Emma's future, in the perspective she represented. And beneath his practical objections lay understanding. This was Lisa's attempt at legacy, at continuing influence beyond her rapidly approaching end. "Okay, thank you." His voice caught slightly on the inadequate words. Lisa smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face despite the ravages of disease and treatment. "No, thank you. Both of you." For teaching a mean old CEO that soup and star-shaped noodles are what actually matter. Jason returned her smile, recognition of the joke they now shared. You're not mean, ruthless in business maybe, terrifying to corporate rivals, definitely, but not mean. Emma says I'm just scared, Lisa admitted, vulnerability showing through her carefully maintained facade. That scared people act mean sometimes. Jason laughed softly. See? Wisdom without having to learn it the hard way. When Jason and Emma left that evening, something unspoken hung between the adults. The awareness that their goodbyes might be final, that Lisa's decline had accelerated following the board meeting confrontation. They didn't acknowledge it directly, maintaining instead the fiction of next visits, future plans, conversations to continue. That night, after tucking Emma into bed, Jason sat alone on their small apartment balcony, staring toward the illuminated penthouse floors of Lisa's building. The woman he'd met just over a month ago, imperious, isolated, resigned to a lonely death, had transformed before his eyes into something unexpected. A fighter, a mentor, a friend to his daughter. Whatever complications tomorrow might bring, whatever responsibilities her foundation proposal entailed, he couldn't regret the impulsive decision that had first led him to her door. His phone buzzed with a text from Lisa's night nurse. She's asking for you both. Soon would be better than morning. The message's understated urgency sent him into immediate motion, calling Mrs. Patel to stay with the still sleeping Emma, grabbing his keys, driving through nearly empty streets toward Lisa's building. In the elevator ascending to the penthouse, he called Catherine, brief words exchanged without sentiment. It's time. Alert the others. The penthouse was dimly lit, medical equipment now dominant in the bedroom where he'd first encountered Lisa. The night nurse nodded grimly as Jason entered, stepping aside to give them privacy. Lisa lay motionless against white pillows, oxygen tubes providing supplemental support, monitors tracking declining vital signs. Her eyes opened at his approach, still sharp despite everything, still recognizably Lisa. Emma? Her voice was barely audible, each word an effort. Sleeping. Mrs. Patel is with her. Jason sat in the chair beside the bed, taking Lisa's cold hand in his. I came alone. I wasn't sure if you'd want her to see. Lisa's fingers tightened fractionally around his. Smart decision. Her gaze held his, conveying what strength remained. Tell her I went to the magic forest, to rest and get stronger. Jason nodded, throat tight with unexpected emotion. I will. They sat in companionable silence, the monitors providing quiet electronic accompaniment to Lisa's increasingly labored breathing. After several minutes, she spoke again, each word measured and deliberate. You'll take the foundation position. It wasn't a question. Jason squeezed her hand gently in confirmation. I'll need help, guidance. But yes, I'll do it. Satisfaction crossed Lisa's features. A battle won, a goal achieved. The paperwork is done. Catherine has everything. Her eyes drifted closed briefly, gathering strength. Promise me something? Anything. The word emerged without hesitation. Don't let them turn me into a saint at the funeral. Lisa's mouth curved slightly. I was difficult, demanding, often ruthless. I want to be remembered as I was, not some sanitized version. Jason smiled despite the circumstances. I promise to tell at least 3 unflattering stories about you, balanced with the good ones. Lisa nodded, satisfied. Tell Emma. Her voice faltered, words failing momentarily. Tell Emma she saved my life. Not from dying alone, from dying like I didn't matter. The raw honesty of her statement stripped away any remaining distance between them. Employer and employee, rich and working class, dying and living. In this moment, they were simply 2 humans acknowledging the profound impact of connection, of being seen. I will. Jason's voice was rough with emotion he'd normally conceal. She'll carry that with her always. Lisa's gaze shifted toward the window where dawn was beginning to lighten the eastern sky. I was so angry when I got sick, so bitter about everything I wouldn't get to do, to see. She breathed carefully between sentences, conserving energy. But these past weeks, I've lived more than in years before. Really lived, not just existed. Her fingers tightened around Jason's with surprising strength. That's what I want my foundation to do. Give people more life in whatever time they have, not just existence. It will. I promise. Jason held her gaze steadily, accepting the transfer of purpose, of mission. Lisa nodded once more, then closed her eyes. When she spoke again, her voice was fainter, but somehow peaceful. I'm tired now. Stay until I sleep? Jason remained beside her as her breathing gradually slowed, as monitors began their warning sounds, as the night nurse returned to administer final comfort measures. He stayed as dawn broke fully over Chicago, as Catherine arrived to handle notifications, as the doctor confirmed what they already knew. Lisa Harrington died on a Tuesday morning in early winter, handheld by a maintenance man who had entered her life by chance and remained by choice. She died not as she had planned, alone in expensive darkness, but surrounded by evidence of connection. Emma's drawings taped to nearby walls, photographs of their impromptu art sessions, the book she'd created for a child who had drawn her wearing superhero capes. She died as the third kind of person, not those who take, not those who give, but those who stay long enough to complete what matters. The funeral was small, as Lisa had specified in her detailed instructions. No corporate memorial, no performative speeches from board members who'd barely known her, just those who had mattered in her final weeks. Jason and Emma, Catherine and Margaret Chen, a handful of employees who'd worked with her since the beginning, and Reynolds representing the board. Emma wore a dress she'd selected herself, deep blue with silver stars, because queens like stars, and held Jason's hand throughout the service. When the minister invited personal reflections, she whispered an urgent question. Can I say something too? Jason hesitated, then nodded. Emma approached the podium, barely visible behind its carved wooden bulk. The minister found a step stool, positioning it so she could reach the microphone. Emma unfolded a piece of paper covered in careful handwriting, smoothed it with small fingers, and addressed the gathered mourners with remarkable composure. Ms. Lisa wasn't always nice, but she was always real. She didn't talk to me like I was stupid just because I'm a kid. She listened to my ideas about soup and stars. Emma paused, gathering courage. When she got scared about dying, she still fought the bad guys anyway. That's what real brave is, doing important things even when you're scared. She looked up from her paper, meeting the adults' gazes directly. Dad says Ms. Lisa built big buildings and made lots of money, but I think her best thing was learning to make friends at the end when it was really hard. That's what I'll remember most. There wasn't a dry eye in the chapel as Emma returned to her seat, mission accomplished. Jason hugged her close, pride and grief intertwining as the service concluded. Afterward, as attendees gathered for the reception, Catherine approached with an envelope bearing Lisa's handwriting. For Jason and Emma Cole. Inside was a letter written in Lisa's careful script, composed during her final days. Jason and Emma, thank you for teaching me what matters when time grows short, for proving that wealth means nothing if you die surrounded by strangers, for bringing soup with star-shaped noodles and drawing me wearing capes I never earned. Jason, the foundation is yours now. Run it well. Run it like you've raised Emma, with the understanding that people need more than money. They need someone to notice them, to bring them soup, to stay. Emma, when you're old enough to read this yourself, I'll be long gone. But I wanted you to know that you saved my life, not with medicine or miracles, with star-shaped noodles and drawings, and the kind of fearless love that adults forget how to feel. Never lose that. The world needs people who care too hard. Your mother was one, your father is one, you will be one. That's the legacy that matters. The penthouse is yours someday. Do something good with it, something your father would be proud of. I already know he will be. With love and gratitude, Lisa. Jason folded the letter carefully, tucking it away to share with Emma when she was older, when she could fully comprehend its meaning. For now, he simply told her the parts she could understand, that Lisa had loved her drawings, that she was grateful for their friendship, that she believed Emma would do important things someday. In the weeks that followed, Jason navigated dual transitions, becoming director of the Harrington Foundation while maintaining his role as Emma's father, her constant, her safety. The learning curve was vertical, the responsibilities vast, but Catherine provided guidance, and Margaret Chen offered corporate wisdom tempered with practical advice. The Foundation's first initiative, emergency housing for families with hospitalized children, launched 3 months after Lisa's death. When the ribbon-cutting ceremony concluded, Emma tugged at Jason's sleeve, expressions serious beyond her years. "Can we use Ms. Lisa's penthouse for families too, so they can be closer to the hospital?" The question crystallized something Jason had been considering but hadn't fully articulated. "Of course we can. That's exactly what we should do with it." By the following autumn, the penthouse had been converted into temporary accommodations for families with children receiving treatment at Northwestern Memorial, the same hospital where Lisa had undergone chemotherapy. The master bedroom where Lisa had once waited for death became a play space filled with light and children's laughter. The dining room war table where they'd plotted Parker's downfall now hosted support groups and family meals. The kitchen where Lisa had first shared coffee with Jason now produced comfort food for exhausted parents. Years passed, the foundation grew, expanding programs across Chicago, then regionally, eventually nationally. Emma thrived, excelling in school, developing particular interest in medicine, volunteering at the foundation's events, with increasing responsibility as she matured. The soup program became its signature initiative, delivering homemade meals to families in medical crisis, each container including star-shaped pasta as their unofficial symbol. On Emma's 16th birthday, Jason took her to lunch at a restaurant overlooking the city, the same view Lisa had commanded from her penthouse. He presented her with Lisa's original letter, preserved all these years for this moment. Emma read it carefully, fingers tracing Lisa's handwriting, connecting with the woman she remembered more through impression than clear memory. "Did you love her?" Emma asked after folding the letter, the question catching Jason off guard with its directness. He considered carefully, wanting to honor both truth and appropriate boundaries. "Not the way I loved your mom, but yes, I loved her. The way you love people who change your life, who teach you how to be better." "Good." Emma tucked the letter into her purse, satisfaction evident in her expression. Everyone should be loved like that. She was 15 now, already taller than Rachel had been, already developing the confidence and compassion that would define her adult personality. Already understanding what Lisa had recognized years earlier, that connections forged in crisis could prove as meaningful as those built over decades. When Emma graduated high school 4 years later, she announced her intention to attend medical school, specializing in pediatric oncology. "I want to help kids with cancer," she explained to Jason as they sat in their apartment. College acceptance letters spread across the table, and their families too. "I want to be like Ms. Lisa, fixing big problems, and like Mom, caring too hard about people." Jason watched his daughter, no longer the small girl who believed in magical star-shaped noodles, now a young woman with clear purpose and unwavering determination. He recognized in her the best of everyone who had shaped her. Rachel's compassion, Lisa's strategic thinking, his own practical persistence. The culmination of influences, yet uniquely herself. "I think that's the perfect choice for you," he said simply, pride evident in every word. That evening, they visited the penthouse-turned-family housing, bringing dinner for the current residents. 3 families whose children were undergoing treatment at Northwestern. Emma moved among them with natural ease, connecting with exhausted parents and scared siblings, creating moments of normalcy amid medical chaos. Jason observed from the periphery, witnessing his daughter embody exactly what Lisa had envisioned for her foundation. Later, they stood on the penthouse balcony overlooking the city Lisa had once conquered through business acumen and sheer determination. The same city where Jason had once fixed air conditioners, where Emma had once drawn pictures of queens and towers. The same city that now housed dozens of foundation programs, hundreds of families served, thousands of lives improved through Lisa's legacy and their stewardship. "What do you think she'd say if she could see what we've done with her foundation?" Emma asked, leaning against the railing, her expression thoughtful beneath the city lights. Jason smiled, memories of Lisa's fierce intelligence and unexpected vulnerability surfacing with perfect clarity despite the years between. "I think she'd say we understood what actually matters, that we taught other people to care about the right things, that her legacy turned out exactly as she hoped." Emma nodded, satisfaction evident in her posture. Above them, stars emerged against the darkening sky, the same stars visible from penthouse heights and modest apartment balconies alike. connecting all levels of the city beneath their ancient light. Somewhere in that vast urban landscape, families were eating soup with star-shaped noodles, finding momentary comfort amid medical crises. Somewhere, people were surviving impossible challenges because someone had noticed their struggle and decided to stay. That, Jason reflected as he stood beside his daughter on the balcony where Lisa had once contemplated ending her life, was the most unexpected legacy of all. Not buildings or billions, but this. The quiet revolution of caring when caring was inconvenient, of showing up when leaving would be easier, of choosing again and again to stay. He put his arm around Emma's shoulders, both of them gazing out at the city where their story had unfolded. The foundation would continue its work tomorrow. There would be new families to help, new challenges to address, new opportunities to create meaning from suffering. But tonight was for remembering how it began, with soup and star-shaped noodles and a maintenance man who had knocked on the wrong door at exactly the right time.